Hi, and today my project will be about Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes. Basically, I will be explaining his book, Leviathan, which has several different things in it, all about the philosophy of people, their state of nature, the way people act sometimes, the way the government is formed, how monarchies form, the needing for a monarch, what happens when we don't have one, what people are like with or without the monarch, and that sort of stuff. But yeah, his book was very influential, especially when the 16th century rolled around that time. The start of modern philosophy was mainly because of the book Leviathan. It was very important as it helped establish certain philosophical aspects of government and the way people think. It's also what broke the barrier between medieval philosophy and the new Western philosophy, modern era of philosophy that we share today. It made sense in the history as it was built as a response to Disocrates, or Disocrates. It starts with a D and it's very hard to pronounce. Point is, the book was mainly composed of fear because that's just the way Hobbes was known to write. The way Hobbes just did things was very interesting, to say the least. The things he helped pioneer included the thoughts of the social contract, the nature of man, things I've already listed. But at the time, these were relatively new concepts, as people believed that they were special and that everything they had came from the right of a god or a right of a monarch, which it was neither, as he believed that it was the right of no one, and instead it was a natural born thing. So I'll get into it into the next slide, but yeah, he basically told people that no, they're not by some god, but they're just in a state of pure nature. Hobbes was born in the year 1588. At the time, the Spanish Armada had come to the city his mom lived in and had placed it under siege. His mom fled while also giving birth to him. Well, she fled, then she gave birth to him. But the main part is it was premature. And because of this premature birth, this is why fear is a major part of Hobbes's writings, as Hobbes learned from his mother about the fear of being attacked, just generally, fear. He was a loyalist to the French Empire and had a lot of fear in his story due to the English Civil War, plus birth circumstances. So pretty much he feared that since he was a loyalist during the time they were executing people with the guillotine, he thought he would also be killed if people found out that he was loyal to the the French people. French monarch. Yeah. So, continuing on the writer, Hobbes was an empiricist, which means that knowledge was gained through the experience of the natural senses, which will loop back into his writing, where he believes that people were born in a state of nature, basically similar to animals, but we have higher level thinking. He also believed in the whole epistemology, which investigates the matter of belief being justified in the difference of opinions. While he may not have fully believed in it, he did popularize the idea, which made the way some people seek truth. So basically, he did his best to try and justify the royal views that he had by trying to explain the state of nature, social contract, things like that, so he can try and convince the people to be sure and to read his book and to understand the points that he was making. So essentially, he was just trying to spread a small amount of fear while also trying to explain his point of view with the book. A short history about the book. The book was one of the most influential works written in the modern philosophy period, or history, however you want to interpret it. It was made as a response to, again, can't pronounce it, Socrates and his own materialism. It was also made because Hobbes fears from the political turmoil of the English Civil Wars. He feared that when Parliament turned on the king, he would be in trouble with the people for being a loyalist, so he fled for 11 years to France, where he wrote the famous book about natural science and philosophy. So yeah, Hobbes' main fear was that since there was no monarchy, people would just go not insane, but would just act more like animals and be more uncivilized, which, again, roots back from the state of nature points he was making. As for the political turmoil, he was mostly scared of that, because at the time people were being executed for being loyalists, and he had a reasonable fear that if he was a loyalist, then he would also be executed, which makes a lot of sense. So, during that time, he wrote the book and made sure that the future generations could understand the state of nature and other aspects of social philosophy, which also made history, as it was one of the main backings behind certain governments, such as the United States, as they technically use the Constitution as a form of a social contract, but we'll get back into that in a minute. The nature of the book was very complicated, but also simple once you understand it. The nature of the book is important, just as it skyrockets the world from medieval to the modern philosophy age. The book reflects his ideas that humans are born in a state of nature, and an approach saying that we are comparable to other animals due to humans having similar actions as traditionals to animals, mainly the violent ones. So basically, humans share a lot of things with animals. For some, we share DNA. For others, we share behavioral traits like humans dance, animals dance. Differences: animals do it to get mates. Humans do it actually for pretty much the same thing. Humans actually end up doing a lot of things that animals do. We just don't know it or really think about it. But in addition to just, but to the contrary of just being like animals, that humans are capable of rational thought. So basically, we think, we can think, we can see, and we can understand what's going on, unlike most animals, whose some don't even understand their own reflection, which is actually true. Look it up. This was a very controversial take at the time because a lot of people believed in the Bible and they did not like the idea of being compared to an animal like a monkey or a dog. So people got really mad at him for it. It was not only controversial just for the state of nature part, but also for him agreeing with the loyalists and telling people that they need the monarchy. And he would, and everyone would have rejected his views on the monarchy. And that's why he, actually I don't know what he did after the book. He kind of just disappeared. But yeah, people didn't really like the fact that he was trying to defend the monarchy, which at the time was a big no-no. So Hobbes, continuing on in the state of the book, Hobbes argues that the monarch is a beast needing to help take control of the people who know little to nothing. So basically going back to the point of basically people needing to learn as they go on in life using their natural senses. Basically implying that the monarch, for the most part, knows what they're doing because they've been through a lot of experiences that make them qualified for it. And that he claims that the monarch rules it doesn't rule with divine right given by a god, but instead by a matter of the people and the social contract that he constantly describes. Thus, where people give the monarch power, thus validating the government, thus making them above animals, but still clinging to that state of nature. So basically, without the social contract, without the monarch social contract, people would just resort back to a state of nature and, do animalistic things to each other and to everything else. For obvious reasons, Hobbes used the book to advocate for the monarchy and the benefits it provided. But at the time, this was a very controversial take for the French because no one liked the government. And as a result, most people didn't really like the book at the time, but his ideas still lingered on and helped the founding fathers bring up the U.S. constitutional government that we have today. So while it didn't work at the time, it actually worked in the end as it helped form a modern American society. The impact of the book. Basically, Hobbes was one of the first people to talk about contractarianism, an ethical non-judgmental of the social contract, saying that it's not on God or virtues of the common individual. Basically, the collective people make what's good and bad, hence it being social. So kind of like in one country like America, slavery isn't allowed, but in another country it is. Basically, they're saying that just because it's not okay in one place, the social the social society that someone else resides in would allow slavery. So basically, societal norms help define morality in certain places, which is why different religions, different people, different everything is so different, which is why a lot of people don't get along either because of the different ways that they were raised. While this was the first, it certainly wasn't the last time people brought up a social contract as a necessary form of ethics. The book also helps spread the idea of rationalism, so basically the way of finding truth through facts and logic and trying to understand these things by asking questions. Not like skepticism, as skepticism is more skeptical, because I don't know the other word for it. But yeah, like I said, with the social contract as a necessary part, we have the American government, because we focused on the social contract of the people voting and all that fancy stuff. Thus, the social contract applies here too. So we will be finishing off the presentation with some quotes by Thomas himself in his book, and I will explain some of these as I go along. In quotes, "For such is the nature of man, that howsoever they may acknowledge many others to be more witty, more eloquent, or more learned, yet they hardly believe so many so wise as themselves, for they see their own wit at hand, and other men's at distance." Basically, he's saying that with the whole, being natural with the senses of learning as we go, they will basically think that they're better than everyone else, and it's hard for them to believe that someone can match them on their level. The next one, in quotes, "For to accuse requires less eloquence, such is a man's nature, than to accuse, and condemnation than absolution more resembles justice." Basically, him saying that just because you're born in a state of nature, you're born with rational mind, does not give you the excuse to do certain actions, that being one of them. Basically things like murder, really that kind of stuff. And the final one, "Words are a wise man's counter. They do not reckon by them, but they are the money of fools." Basically saying that money's for fools. That was really simple. This is basically my works cited. As you can see, it has some main points of basically, well, the website where I got a good chunk of my information, the pointers for the presentation inside the presentation module, where it gave some basic information that I was able to use for the presentation, a video recommended by the instructor from Crash Course about Hobbs and contractionaryism, and then this final source where I got some quotes for the final slide. Second to final slide. This is the final slide. But yeah, all these sources help make this presentation possible, and I am happy that it did, because I wouldn't have been able to do it without it.